for us to get started, I want to welcome you. Thank you so much, Nancy. I hope I say your last name right. It's Mendoza?
Close.
Okay, Mendonca?
Mendonca.
Mendonca. Okay. So we are so thrilled to have you here, and I can't wait to hear what you'll be sharing with us today. So I am actually just going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and I will open your screen up so you are pinned as the spotlight. There you are.
Ta-da!
All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Oh no, it's great to be here. And like it's wow, it's a guys got a lot of enthusiasm. It's fun. So, and I'm like now I'm intimidated. so like I said, I'm Nancy Mendonca, and I am in the ARMD portion of NASA, the Aeronautics Research and Mission Directorate, which is one of 4 of the mission directorates, and we focus on aeronautics. So I'm assuming that folks are familiar with the 2 of our NASA projects, UAS and the NAS, and UTM. So I'm kind of based on that, and then if my assumptions are bad, stop me, and we can shift my train of thought and go down different directions to whatever folks want to hear. So assuming that you are familiar with that, and then my other assumption is you guys aren't as familiar with what we're calling advanced air mobility and urban air mobility. So I kind of want to walk through, at least my plan is to walk through how we came to our current plans. But like I said, happy to sidetrack if folks have questions or are interested in different things of how NASA got to where it is today and what we're doing, what we've got, and we're doing what we planned. So I do have the chat up on my other monitor. So when I look to the left, I'll see if anybody says, no, stop, wait, what's that acronym again? I'm really bad with acronyms. So, okay. Yeah, if you, Desi, if you want to bring up the first slide, that'd be great.
All right. Do you see it? Everybody see the slides?
Yeah. Okay. So 2 years ago, NASA was working on its budget cycle, and we were trying to make the decision of if we were going to invest in, at that point, we called it urban air mobility. So we contracted out for 2 different market studies, and they're both the images from both there. And from the market studies, when they came back, they both came back and said that we think that there's going to be a really viable market in urban air mobility. And urban air mobility in both these market studies included passenger carrying vehicles and smalls doing approximately 5-pound packages. So this was kind of our, hey, you know, we're looking at potentially spending a lot of the taxpayer dollars in this area. We want to make sure that there's a commensurate benefit with the money that we spend. So this was our effort to look and give us a sanity check on that. So we were really happy with the results. Both of these studies are on our NASA's NTRS server. It's a NASA technical report server. So if you go to that website, you can search on UAM market, and any of these studies will come up if you want to look through them. So I encourage you to do that if you're interested more in the studies and what we're predicting and some of the assumptions that were made. So next slide. So after we finished the studies and we decided that we're going to look at investing, we had to decide what we wanted, how we wanted to invest and what we wanted to invest in. So NASA stood up a team that we called UCAT, and we had probably about 15 people, and we spent the next approximately year looking at the airspace, what's involved, who was doing what needed to be done, what were the challenges. So for the first was a framework. It's a really, and even in the smalls, you guys, it's really complicated. By the time you get the vehicles and the airspace and the operators and all the business models, it's really, sometimes it's overwhelming to look and say, how are we going to get this all to work? So one of the first things we did was come up with a framework so we could have the discussions and get down into the details around those discussions. So our framework is shown here in our pentacopter. And the bottom 2 are the red ones are our vehicle pentacopters, and then the 2 blue ones are our airspace part of the framework, and then the purple is our community integration one. So you kind of got that division of airspace versus vehicle, and then also if you draw a line down the middle, the left side of the chart shows design aspects, and then the right part shows operational aspects. And we had some really great discussions and fun things about, hey, does this go there? Or does that go there? And we really struggled with the 7 down there in the middle bottom of the cross-cutting: safety, security, affordability, noise, autonomy, ports, which is now shifted names again, and certification. So like I said, the framework really helped us to engage the community and have the discussions and structure some documents around, and we put our thoughts down. The barriers piece of it, or kind of technical, you call them technical challenges, regulatory challenges, a lot of different hurdles, a lot of different names. We chose barriers. And then each of those, the major barriers that we thought went in each of those airspace, in each of those pillars, we've listed there. We've got them numbered on them. So if folks are more interested, I can dive into one or more of the others, but this was kind of how we set it up and how we did the framework. And let's see, I lost my chat over here to see if anybody had any questions in there. So, okay. So, and this is flowed through a lot of our documents. Part of one of the things that the UCAT did was we did an OpsCon, and it was a document to start describing what's the current state of, or how does the system work if you were to discuss it using this framework and these barriers. And then we took an idea of describing a little bit of how the system could look in the future using that same different structure. And then OpsCon is also on that NTRS report server if folks would like to look at it. So next slide. As our process matured and we moved through the year, I think you skipped one. So one of the questions that no, it's the UML one. There we go. Okay. So one of the questions you keep kind of getting is, how do you assess your progress towards your vision? Where do you want your vision to be? So one of our folks, Ken Goodrich, led the effort, and Parimal Kopardecker, which I'm sure you guys probably recognize his name, were really instrumental in putting this together. And it's an effort to describe the system as it matures to go through. So we looked at it according to all the barriers, according to the framework. So you see the vehicle, the airspace, and the community as part of it. And then we looked at different aspects of technologies and capabilities and how they would change as you moved from UML 1, 2, 3, and 4 down to 6. 6 was our vision, farther out in the future, where you can get on your app and say, I want an urban air vehicle to pick me up at my house at 10:15 and take me to work and be there by 12. So that was kind of that. But it does describe, aircraft certification is one of the parts of we see in UML 1. Hey, we're starting to get passenger carrying vehicles certified and they're out there flying and things. So we're not at UML 1, and it's always been a good, interesting debate on when we're going to hit each of the UMLs. I think right now we're targeting UML 4 in 2030 is kind of what we're looking at. One of the other things we had to do as we worked through this process was we had to scope the discussion. So, if you look across the airspace, there's the smalls, there's the passenger carrying, there's the larger cargo carrying, there's the more regional short takeoff and landing vehicles. So when we did this, we narrowed the scope to just the passenger carrying sized vehicles so that we could have more detailed discussions and not not have such a big problem that we really even couldn't wrap our arms around it. I mean, this was pretty tough to do. So this does describe much more of a limited vision of those markets, but that's not to say that there won't be other markets within this vision. Right now, we're focusing on UML 4 because it's been a challenge to describe, but it's been a lot easier to describe than UML 6. And right now, folks probably haven't seen it, but I know the FAA did 2 UTM ConOpses, 1.0 and 2.0 that are out there. The FAA recently did one for urban air mobility. So the very first version's out there, and it's more focused on the UML 1 piece. And then NASA is wrapping up, and hopefully we'll publish soon, a UML4 vision that we can use to engage with the community and to start having these conversations of, okay, here's the vision, how do we get to this vision? Next slide. And then one thing is, as we started to talk, as we got to this point, had enough material that we were ready to start talking with the FAA and industry and kind of see where things were at. So this is another chart kind of showing different things in different aspects. Across the top, you'll see the UMLs 1, 2, 3, and 4. Down the left side, you'll see the 5 pillars that we discussed. And we broke this into major functions that we think need to happen in each of the UMLs. So it pulls from the descriptions on the previous slide. And what do we want to see to be able to get to each UML and further on? So I've really been interested down in the community integration has been one of the areas that I focused on, partly because, a lot of the NASA folks, we've got experts in airspace and experts in vehicles, and we haven't done a lot of work with communities. So I kind of helped pull these together and have focused and kept this area moving along. So one of, say down at the bottom, early adopter cities, to be able to get and move forward on urban air mobility, we really need some early cities to step forward and say, hey, we're interested. We want to do pilot programs and participate. So those are, oh, I'm sorry, somebody's got a question. Nope. And then the red and orange squares at the legends across the top, that was when we did this a year and a half ago, that was kind of our assessment of where things were. So, like I say, early adopter cities, we knew we had folks that were interested. And I mean, I'm sure folks have heard about Uber Elevate talking with Dallas and Los Angeles. So we thought there was some interest around there, but it wasn't quite green because nobody had really stepped up and said, I'm in, all in, 100%. And so that's what those mean on this chart. And the charts continue to evolve. Like I say, this is probably a year and a half old now. But it was another way to start looking at what needs to be done and who was going to do it. And I think one other neat thing about this was we realized, and it's probably pretty obvious when you start thinking about it, is there's so much that needs to be done, and it's so complicated that one entity can't do it all. So it was also our start to thinking about, okay, who would be doing it? And, where does NASA really fit in areas like that? So I think there's tremendous opportunity here, especially as we're going from the UTM model of third-party service providers, that a lot of this will be done by industry and manufacturers and things. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for folks to participate in this space and to really have an impact and do a lot of work, a lot of great work there. So let me pull up the chat. Desi, can you help me with the question? Let's see. What is the ideal size for an early adopter city? Actually, we haven't really discussed on it. Like I said, Dallas has been definitely interested, and they've got a lot of work done in the space. A lot of some cities that were parts of the FAA's UPP and IPP are kind of naturally positioned to help and take it on. It kind of depends on where the cities are at. I think we're seeing right now that they're bandwidth limited, either from fires, hurricanes, the COVID, or other issues. So it's been kind of a challenge to see, but we haven't really said, hey, you have to have 1 million people or 5. We do think that as you go from UML 1 to 4, that operations will probably start in rural and then move to urban areas, just because you have a better risk management case when you're flying over unpopulated areas to do a lot of your testing. And then it'll migrate to rural areas where the risks are higher. So I hope, Neil, I answered your question. And I think I will take my next and last slide. So this is, like I say, this is kind of a little bit more on the other slide. We added timelines to the 2020, 2022. And this is what we were hearing from industry when we did this about a year and a half ago. When did industry think that these things would be needed? Because part of the calculus when you're as a government agency is to understand when industry thinks it needs something, so you can start to back up and say, okay, industry needs this in 2028. That means if they want to be flying and fielding at 2028, we have to deliver our research by 2026, 2027 in order for them to meet their goal. So if we have to be done by 2026, that means that we better start by 2021. So that's what this chart did, was kind of worked out to help us backtrack and see when we would have to start doing things to be able to deliver them when industry was thinking that we needed them. One other thing that we did in planning early on was we were challenged to come up with a way to help with public acceptance and to energize industry and help them make progress towards standards and operations and things. And so we designed the national campaign, and you maybe have run across it or seen one of the presentations on it. But it's a place, or it's a means for different vehicle and airspace companies to come out and demo their operations, so we can work with them to say, hey, you're thinking about operating this way. This, here are the pros and cons of doing that. The FAA has partnered with us, and they can get data from it to help develop their standards. It's really if your folks are familiar with the TCLs that the UTM project did, it's a more robust and advancement of demonstrations along those lines. And so there's other, like I said, there's quite a few briefs out there that Star Ginn's given at different forums. One thing I will also point to as a recommendation, NASA has a NARI website. It's the NASA Aeronautics Research Institute, but NARI. So if you Google on that and then click on the AAM link, there's we've done a whole series of talks and panel discussions and on AAM in each of the different pillars. There's an airspace, a vehicle, a community, and then a cross-cutting group in there. All of those have been recorded. All of the presentations are there. So I really encourage you, like I say, if you're interested in any particular area, find that working group and you can learn more on that. One thing they have done that's been really interesting is they did an Airspace 101 series to talk about the current NAS today, because we were kind of hearing that people weren't really familiar with how the NAS operates. So that was it's a good series if you're not, deeply involved with all the acronyms of all the things that work for general air, the transport class airlines and things. So I'd recommend that one. Oh, and I think one like close is these all say UAM because they were from a year ago. And when we started working with the FAA, we looked at it and said, hey, urban is a focus, and a lot of if we solve all the hard challenges in the urban area, we've probably solved them for the rural area. But when we talk to people, we don't want to come across as excluding the rural areas and areas that aren't urban. So we've changed that. We've gone to the AAM acronym to describe it, and you'll see advanced air mobility. So it has a much broader set of issues and participants and potential markets. And sometimes you'll see UAM when we're talking about just that urban area and some of the challenges that we're focused on. And then sometimes you'll see us use AAM for that broader market and the broader set of stakeholders. And that's my last slide. I hope I haven't gone too long, Desi.
No, not at all. Actually, I think Johnny had a question. I don't know if you want to unmute or not, Johnny, but he had asked, what about aerial congestion in concentrated areas?
Can you give me a little more? Is there talking separation? Are you talking enabling?
Traffic flow.
Okay, so kind of in the airspace pillar, we're initially starting out with a thought on high density routes, and some people call them corridors or whichever, but the thought is on those is first of all, people are probably going to want to go from a lot of people are probably going to go from one place to another place. So we think that demand will be focused, like airports. I mean, a lot of people wanted to go to the airport to be able to fly out for a longer trip. So you could say, okay, the route from the local metro station or the local train station to the airport is going to be heavily used. So we're talking about designating that like a high density route or high density corridor. So within it, you have traffic that can be separated either, you know, vertically or horizontally and go flow, kind of like the highway. So we're able to do traffic separation that way. We think that you'll end up seeing, like today's NAS, that a lot of the choke points will be at the vertiports. So we really are starting to look into how can we make these vertiports as efficient as possible so that we can get the number of aircraft taking on and off. And for separation, one of the concepts, if you're familiar with from UTM, we called them USSs then, UAS service suppliers, and they were the concept was a federated third-party service provider. So commercial industry would provide separation services to the different aircraft within that route. And in AAM or UAM, we've called them PSUs, so pretty similar to USS, but they would have the same function. They would provide, you know, separation services, strategic planning up front, tactical planning, communications. So you could have multiple PSUs working in a metro area. So, you know, as an aircraft operator, you'd say, hey, I want to fly a flight plan from this vertiport to that vertiport. You'd file a proposed operations plan or flight plan with the PSU. The PSU would work with the other PSUs and say, oh, okay, no other aircraft wants to fly at those exact times over that exact route. They would send back a approved operations plan, and then the aircraft would be cleared to take off from the vertiport following that approved plan. And then the PSUs would also work with the aircraft to do separation in case, you know, there's some inadvertent obstacle, you know, an aircraft flies through that doesn't have its, you know, approval or whatever. So you can do tactical separation from that. Or if somebody has an emergency, has to land immediately, then the PSU and the aircraft operator work to either fly around or adjust to those off nominal or contingency operations. Did I answer your question?
We'll keep an eye on our chat. And then Probin, do you want to unmute and ask your question? And Johnny said that and more.
Okay.
There we go.
So we haven't dug into the pilot certification for UAM. We have forecasted that the certification won't be similar to what it is today. So because there's so much time and experience required for a pilot today, that it really doesn't open up the job market as much and open up opportunities for pilots and things. So we've called it simplify SDO, and I'm trying to remember I forget what the SDO acronym is exactly at this point. But the pilot won't have as rigorous a training requirements. So we've got research to do in a lot of these areas, but that's one, is what functions that the pilot is currently doing today can we do with automation in the future, so that the person who is the pilot in command of the flight or multiple flights, what are their responsibilities? How do they work with the automation? You know, what functions go to the automation to do? What functions remain with the pilot in command to do? So it's definitely kind of we have a vision and we have a lot of research to do to get there. So we'll see and how it works out. I know that's not a great answer right now, but at least we have thoughts on the idea and a lot of work. We need help.
Who will be establishing then some of those standards? Because a number of schools that I work with now, from high schools to community colleges, they're all asking me these questions. And how do we start preparing and training our folks? And right now, I go to lots of presentations like this to try to figure out where to help steer them.
Our FAA friends. they own it. Yeah, and I don't envy their job. They've got a huge job, and it's really hard. But to do that, so I think, so like I say, the first step was kind of describing what the vision is, and saying, hey, is everybody on board with vision, or is this not a goal that we all want to shoot for? And then kind of when you have that, here's where I want to be in 10 years, you can start to back up and start to research it and decide that. NASA we've got a little bit of human factors work, but we've not done a lot of work, or right now we're not planning to do a lot of work in this area. But I do want to call out some of our partner standard organizations, ASTM, RTCA, SAE. I mean, there's a lot of those folks out there that have taken the initiative and stood up different working groups to start working on some of these issues. And one of them may have already. I mean, I admit this isn't my area of expertise, but it is an ideal forum to start to discuss some of these questions. I've been digging in on the weather part, and the ASTM folks have stood up 3 working groups to talk about weather data standards, weather interface standards, and standards for weather supplemental data service providers. So I would say, like, hey, get the community together. Maybe we do it as a topic at one of our NASA's AEWG meetings, or the community stands up and says, hey, we really want to talk about, pilot certification for this, and see if one of the standards organizations will sponsor a standards group and start working with it. And then, you pull in the FAA counterparts and who makes the decisions there and start working on it. But yeah, it's going to be a real challenge. It's going to be a real challenge. And there's a couple pathways to do it. And I'm sure there's tons of people that are a lot smarter in making rules than I am. So I'd really engage with them and say, hey, here's where we want to be. What are the different paths to get there, and what makes sense and we can do.
Great. Nancy, is that a CH-47 behind you on the shelf?
It's a 46. It's smaller and and cuter.
Did you fly that?
Yeah, I did. I flew.
Awesome.
I was in the Navy for 20 years, so I flew. I loved them.
Fantastic.
Flying sideways is awesome.
Super.
So, let's see. How do you see this SUAS is integrating into the NAS? I think we're going to see where, like UTM is doing right now. I mean, right now it's the 400 feet below. It has a definite path with Lance and other things. And we definitely leveraged a lot of the great concepts in there as we were thinking about AAM, and probably sometime in the UML 4, 5, 6 frame, there maybe not be one system that does both together. So you could have a PSU that does smalls and the passenger size carrying. We're also kind of looking at the concept because you've got other areas of the airspace. We've got the high E altitude and other things that how do we make this efficient and leverage some of the concepts, so that if we do Lance for one, let's just expand on the Lance concept for the passenger carrying. We don't need to reinvent the wheel for things that are already working great. Let's see. I have a monitor next to my laptop, so that's why I'm looking over to the left to read the questions. In the course of the study from NASA or even FAA, is there available documentation about what a vertiport might need? Has that been considered yet? So couple efforts. The Vertical Flight Society has done a great series on infrastructure. The first one was in December of last year. That was in person, but the next 2 were virtual, one in June and one in September. And they really touched on a lot of the areas around vertiports. So I encourage you to go there, look at the slides, and reach out to a lot of the speakers, put their names and numbers up there. So I encourage you that, expert. NASA's doing a little work around vertiports with the FAA as part of the National Campaign Series. And one of our sub-projects is doing, called High Density Vertiports. And they just started a contract with the folks out of New York, New Air, and several subs under that to write a vertiport concept of operations. So we hope to see that sometime in the spring. It is focused on automation in vertiports. So it's kind of like the pilot issue of what in a vertiport can be automated and what can't be automated and what's a path to get there. But right now they're trying to, set that vision in the head of, hey, and I think is at UML 4, we think that these functions of a vertiport are going to be automated. So the passenger walks in, waves their phone at the ticket check-in, They go over a scale so they can check the weight and balance, and then maybe somebody helps them on the aircraft, somebody doesn't, but it's all kind of seamless. So how much of that is automated? What's in there? How do you deal with the security, the ticketing, the check-in, making sure that the aircraft is safe? So there's a little bit, but there's other efforts. The Hillwood folks down in Dallas have done a lot of work on Vertaports. And communities are starting to look at them because infrastructure takes a long time. It's like a 30 to 40-year lead time for infrastructure. So we're really starting to dig in and say, okay, how do we do design and deal with it? Three other efforts I'm aware of. The FAA is getting ready to release its heliport design circular that they've been working on. Their vertiport design circular got retired, but right now they're talking about plans to redo and update that, so that will help. And then the other, I think Rex Alexander's leading a vertiport working group with ASTM. So that's a great avenue to engage with and have current discussions along those areas. So there's some great work out there, and there's a ton of work left to do. I mean, we've talked about taxonomy, and I think you saw in my slides we called it a UAM port, and then we've called it a vertiport, and then the FAA's UAM ConOps called it an aerodrome. So we're still struggling about what do we call these things, and does it have a different name if it has one pad? Does it have a different name if it's two pads? So it's like I say, it's a definite challenge. Did I answer the integrations question, Tony, or no?
Yeah, you did.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Jamie, can I give you the next one? Are there any programs to introduce this into STEM for the kids that are interested?
Yeah, I'm actually putting that in the link right now. It's a link to the NASA page, and it has some tools that people can use, and then also some teacher resources in that.
Yeah, our comms folks are great. Jamie and Karen Rugg and things like that. They've done a lot of STEM activities, and they're really, really working hard. It's amazing to see the neat things that they've done. So I think I got most of the questions. Did I miss anybody?
It looks pretty good. Is there information, your email, or a way to reach out or anything if anybody had any questions or any follow-up that they might want to do?
Yeah, and also I'll put it here, but if you look on the NARI website in one of the weather working groups, the slides in there, my email address is also in there. Okay. See, that's a good place to find it if it gets sidetracked. I hope you find it valuable. I'm happy to take feedback. Or you missed the point. We were interested in something else.
No, I think
really not at all. It was fantastic. We thank you very much. Oh, good. So you put the email on there if anybody wanted to reach out.
Yeah, and don't feel bad about nagging me, because I admit sometimes my inbox is a complete disaster. So don't feel bad about another week saying, hey, I want to pull this to the top of your inbox.
Well, we thank you. We thank you very, very much. And I know the questions will go on, and always what happens, we get done with the coffee connection, and then later on they go, oh man, I should have asked this or that. So glad that we could actually reach out to you, and we thank you so much for your time.
No, thanks for letting me talk.
Sharing with us, both of you. And so we're very, very thankful.